it's the central banks who are the one world government we have been warned about for years. They run the world. They control the money, markets, and everything else. They run it. Everything else is just a sideshow.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for June 20th through June 27th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we featured 2023 1-ounce silver maple coins at $4.99 over spot and backdated 1-ounce silver Australian kangaroos at just $3.99 over spot. Silver maples were the first silver sovereign coins to be minted at 4 nines fine purity, and the 2023 silver maples remain one of the most in-demand coins today. They come 25 to a tube, 500 to a box, and are available at $4.99 over spot with a minimum order size of 1 tube. Next, backdated kangaroos are 4 nines fine 1-ounce silver sovereign coins of Australia, renowned for their purity and design. They come 25 to a tube, and with just 250 coins to a monster box, they are the most affordable monster box available, especially at just $3.99 over spot per ounce while supplies last. Our specials this week are IRA eligible, and if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Gregory Mannarino, the founder of TradersChoice.net, joins us this Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Greg, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Love your show.
Your presence here is always wildly popular with our viewers because they know you speak your mind and they appreciate that about you, and you've got you're in our corner, you've got all of us in your heart, and so you really care about your subscribers and those that you speak to on our channel as well, and many other places. So very popular among those who know that they need somebody who can see behind the veil into the complexity of the system and still come out with their head on straight. So grateful for your presence here. We have had some questions submitted by viewers. We'll get to those in a few minutes. But first, if we could, just get your quick high points of what you think are the most important things that people need to be keeping their eyes on and keeping their in their thoughts right now, because there's more than people can keep track of, and that's intentional, I think. But anyway, your view of what the most important things are that we need to keep our eyes on right now.
Well, I've been telling people for the longest time to raise your awareness. Pay attention to what you're hearing out of the mainstream propaganda ministries and understand that whatever they're telling you, the polar opposite is obviously true. Just as an example, where Powell out here, Fed Chair Powell, is giving his testimony before Congress right now, and it's unbelievable that he can say the things that he's saying without getting any kind of pushback at all. For example, he's talking about inflation. They're in this big fight, and we can expect prices to drop sometime in the future. But seriously, the Fed's been at this fake narrative here for I don't know how long, that they're in the fight of their lives. They want to bring down inflation. It's done nothing but go higher, but there's no accountability. And he's just using he's regurgitating the same line right now before Congress. Oh, things are going to get better. Things are going to get better. Meanwhile, we were, lied to from the get-go. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't transitory. We all understood, people that follow our work, that there was no way inflation was going to drop anytime soon. Meanwhile, we were told it was going to be. Again, every single projection that the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world have fist-fed to we, the people of the world, has been completely wrong. And this is by design. It's a lie. It's a fairy tale. As a matter of fact, I spoke about that this morning. What did we find out just today? Core prices continue to rise. They're telling us what's going on here. Strip out food, strip out energy, because the price fluctuations, they're temporary too. And core prices are still rising. You can't make any of this stuff up. But again, there is zero accountability, and nothing bothers me more than that. And that's what's going on right now. It's a freak show. You got Powell right now testifying before Congress. No legitimate questions. It's all going to be fake. And thank you, sir, for your service and all that nonsense. And it's just revolting to me.
Yeah, what you talked about, the lack of accountability, partly stemming from exactly what you said, the lack of pushback, as you phrased it, or I would call it legitimate journalism on the part of the press. We've interviewed James Rawls, the founder of survivalblog.com, and he titles it, his phrase for this is, he says, "We're living in the age of deception and betrayal." And it's absolutely true. We've been betrayed by our own government, betrayed by the press, so-called journalism, betrayed by those who are supposedly the keepers of public health and well-being for our people, betrayed on all fronts. And that's where people are turning to alternative, or I would call it independent sources of information to try to find out what the heck is really going on, because it doesn't jive, it doesn't match what their gut is telling them. If something's quite concerning and they're being told all's well, nothing to see here, folks, just go back to your homes and proceed, carry on. But you've been watching, in addition to watching the, as you call it, the mainstream propaganda ministries, you also watch other indicators, leading indicators in the markets to tell you what's really going on. What are you looking at other than listening to this smokescreen, just to be aware of what the narrative is?
Well, first of all, going back to the guest you just referred to, thank goodness we have people, you and I, this guy, talking about the deceptions, the distractions, the look here's, the don't look there. It's unbelievable. I call it the freak show. It's an absolute. I mean, even with regard to leading indicators, every single leading economic indicator is pointing towards our economy getting much worse off than it is now. Even inflation indicators are pointing to this is going to get much worse before it gets better here. I mean, the biggest indicator people need to, it's in our face here, is this yield curve. The yield curve is the most inverted it has ever been, ever been. So, I ask people, don't take my word on this, but look it up for yourself. What does it mean when the yield curve inverts, as it has been now for quite a while, with no end in sight here? It's going to be made. We've been seeing some pretty erratic action here in the debt market as of late. 10-year yield bouncing up and down like a yo-yo. The entire yield curve itself moving up and down like a yo-yo. This is not normal. The debt market is supposed to be a rock. It's supposed to be stable. It's clearly unstable. And to me, looking at the yield curve, it just gives us it tells us what we already know, that all of this is going to end very, 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 very badly for those people that are invested in the market. At one point, it's going to turn around, but there's some kind of a mania going on right now. Ever since the Federal Reserve here with their pause, if you want to call it that. This was a signal to the stock market. Hey, don't worry about it. We got your back, at least for now. And there's a lot of effort going in to keep the debt market propped up by, the Fed's buying all the debt here. It's kind of interesting. And we just found out that money markets are actually increasing their exposure to the debt market. This is the time bomb. Money markets are widely held. You got generally money markets, they have their assets allocated in many different ways, but generally it's just considered a safe investment. And they do generally have some cash on the side. And what they're doing now, these institutional money market investors, companies, is they're putting their cash to work in the debt market, which is a monster ready to go off. It's a time bomb, and that's going to destroy people as well. Anyway, it's there's so many facets to this. And everything that you and I have been covering for years and years and years, honestly, is coming to pass. Every freaking thing. It's not, people can look at our work from years ago and say, hey, these guys said this was going to happen, and it is. So I think people who are paying attention to this video right now should maybe give it a little more attention, because again, I guarantee you, there's no doubt in my mind, at least, that what we're talking about here is going to come to pass as well.
Could we drill into one thing that you focused on there, and that was the tendency of people to be investing in the bond market right now, even though we know it's showing signs of instability, as you pointed out, for some time. One of the things that people are doing is chasing yield, not just people, but fund managers. I mean, they're desperate for yield, and that's one of the things that's quite tempting when the Fed dangles out 5% or whatever it is that the people can get, or banks can get, or funds can get by parking their money in the debt. But is that, and you've talked about this in the past, when we have Fed leaders coming out and talking about how we should have the Fed basically, when you talk about central bank digital currencies, or just the Fed backstopping other banks, that sort of thing, it's which banks are too big to fail, and eventually it's the one bank to rule them all, being, the central bank being the only bank. Do you feel that this chase of yield, leading people to do the investing into the bonds and so on at this time, is potentially to gather people into a more manageable, centralized place for their funds? Because we saw that certainly during the lockdowns over the past 3 years, is only the too big to fail retailers were able to keep going. The mom and pop shops all had to be closed, and it was this consolidation. And you've talked about in the past few months with these small regional bank failures and so on, it looks like there's a culling going on, gathering everybody into the pen, into the herd. Can you talk to us about your views of whether this bond chasing of yield by investors may be part of that same?
Well, people shouldn't be chasing anything, in my view here. When you chase something, like, it almost sounds like sitting at a roulette table here, maybe playing like a martingale scheme or something along those lines here. You chase things, eventually it's going to come and bite you. The debt market is the greatest threat to the world economy, the world financial system, the world markets, and it's clearly unstable. It's massively unstable. And every single time, it's a phenomenon that I watch over and over again, and I'm sure you do too. You watch bond yields all of a sudden just rising, and it seems like it's getting out of control. Then all of a sudden, just by some miracle, it just all happens to drop. I mean, who's doing that? Who's at just the opportune time is getting in here and buying all the debt, keeping it suppressed like this? Obviously, we know it's central banks. I mean, people need to understand that when any central bank they're not magic. They can't say something without having to act on it. When they say we're going to keep rates at X, Y, Z, whatever it might be, they have to get into the market and make it happen. They're creating cash out of thin air, which is massively inflationary, buying all the debt, massively inflationary, and they want us to believe that they're in the fight of their lives here. But I think it's extremely dangerous to chase anything. And even you want to put your cash into a bond here, you're guaranteed to lose money based against the actual rate of inflation, or even the inflation rate they're telling us we have. It's an incredible thing, but people are doing that. They feel that, okay, at least I'm going to put look, in my view, people need to step back and look at the bigger picture here. You literally can't be in cash. That's a fact. Cash is being decimated here. Central banks in a race to the bottom. They're deliberately crushing or sucking out the purchasing power of their currencies collectively. They've been doing this for years, something we've covered many, many times. It's not going to get any better. The debt market, I mean, these money market accounts now buying debt. I understand that that's part of how they work here, but it's just, putting more cash to work in the debt market here. It's very risky, in my view, and in my opinion, because we're going to get a sell-off here in the debt market, and it's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't want to put a finger on it. I don't talk about tops or bottoms or anything anymore, but it's a dangerous spot to be in here. And as we all know, at least I hope people understand, the stock market, real estate, and pretty much every single other asset derives value from action that's happening in the debt market, meaning that everything is a derivative. We live in a world of derivatives. Do you know, you probably know this, the top 3 banks with derivative exposure, we're talking about Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Citigroup, over 153 trillion just in those 3 banks. the derivative exposure. It's pretty incredible. Look, this whole thing is built in derivatives. What is a derivative? People don't even hear that word and they think it's like something from outer space. It's very simple to understand. A derivative is just a side bet on an underlying asset, whatever it might be. And then there's not just one side bet. There are multiple layers of this on either side, and it can't be quantified. It can't be measured. So no one actually knows how big the debt market derivatives actually are, or derivatives at face value. It's beyond anybody's ability to even comprehend because it can't be measured. So it's a frightening prospect to think about. But again, what are they doing? We're hearing all of this talk, especially lately, about these central bank digital currencies. We got the IMF yesterday talking about how they're putting together a global infrastructure to allow central bank digital currencies to work in concert together cross-border without causing any problems. So this is it's all out there. I think people that follow our work are well aware of where this is going and how it's going to play out. And I want people to just be ready for it. It's amazing. I talked about this just today in my pre-market video. Think about it. People, I think, for the most part, and I would say for the most part, are grossly opposed to the central bank digital currency. But meanwhile, it's being forced down our throat. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. I mean, right now, the system is 99% digital as it is. And, when I was in Florida, just over the weekend, I happened to notice signs in a couple of the places I just happened to go in, like buy souvenirs and stuff. We will not be accepting cash on X date. So they're already telling us where this is going. You got to swipe, or they're not going to take you. Imagine they're not going to take you. Walk in there with a $10 bill, a $20 bill. They won't take it. That's interesting in my view. And I've been to, even out here in Las Vegas, there's a couple of places with these signs. We will not be accepting cash. The writing is on the wall, people. So just get with the program here. Either do something about it, revolt. We need a revolution. I've been telling people, it's crazy. I was even saying this morning, and somebody reacted not very kindly. I said, we may even need a violent revolt. And the person wrote back to me, oh, never a violent. I said, well, even Christ revolted violently against the money changers in the temple. And that should tell us something. This thing is getting out of hand here, in my view.
Also, the Declaration of Independence very clearly outlines that inherent right as well of people to be their own sovereigns if those that they have entrusted with those duties are destructive of those ends.
It's hard to argue that that's not happening, isn't it? I mean, come on, right? Oh.
One more touch though on bonds before we leave, because I get frequently asked by clients calling and saying, I'm not necessarily comfortable keeping my cash parked in the bank. So is Treasury bonds, is that the place to go? Is that the safest place to go to park my liquidity? Because the idea of having liquidity, I mean, yourself as a lifelong trader, you're a trading coach and so on. There's an important, you said keep the high ground. And partly the high ground in terms of volatility can include maintaining liquidity so that you can take advantage of opportunities when they arise. So people are anticipating there may be opportunities coming up either in real estate or in other assets, stocks or whatever, or potentially even in precious metals if there's some volatility it happens there in sympathy with the other markets. So what are your thoughts on people who want to maintain some liquidity without necessarily getting scalped, getting a haircut every quarter, every year as this inflation marches on?
Unfortunately, the average guy, the average girl, in my view, the ultimate opportunity is, again, I'm going to say it, what I say a million times, is owning precious metals for the long run here. Silver will always be, well, I can't say always, but I would say for now, for as far as I can imagine, my favorite asset of all time. I think it's the most undervalued asset in the world at this point here, based on many, many factors. If you just want to look at three, look at the Dow gold ratio, gold silver ratio. Now, with regard to liquidity, the problem is it's liquidity overall is drying up in the world. We have a system that operates in a perpetual vacuum. The debt can never be inflated enough. It's a debt-based economic model, and because of that, it operates in a perpetual deficit. It can never be made whole. Henceforth, why the debt must continually expand and be inflated. And what people are doing, unfortunately, to themselves is, and they have no choice, unfortunately, and because it's being set up this way, is they're having to contend with the rising prices. I think it's getting very difficult for the average guy or the average girl. The savings rate is in the toilet. People can't put any money away. Meanwhile, we got household debt, credit card debt, personal debt, consumer debt overall at record highs, and it with no end in sight. But we also have debt defaults rising at their fastest pace ever, more so than the Great Recession. So people are burying themselves just to try to survive the current environment, believing, I would imagine, puppets like our so-called representatives or even the Fed chair himself right now parroting the same thing, that inflation is going to get better down the line. But it's got nowhere to go, in my view, but much, much worse moving forward. Again, we continue to inflate and create reasons to borrow cash into existence. I don't know if you saw the article today. I believe it was on, maybe it was Market Watch, this whole rebuilding Ukraine program. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being pledged, even here by the United States, to rebuild Ukraine. We don't have the cash. Where does it come from? Do we have a war chest? Do we have a rebuild Ukraine cash stash somewhere? No. Where does it come from? It comes from the Fed. They're going to make it out of nothing. It's an unbelievable thing, but this is all in a mechanism here to continue to inflate. Again, I've been telling people forever, you're going to see things thrown at us down the line you're not going to believe. For example, rebuild Ukraine. All right, we're not only funding the war, but now we're promising hundreds of billions to rebuild Ukraine. Nothing could make a central banker happier than hearing something like that, because we're broke. We don't have any money at all. What are we, $32 trillion in debt, more so? I don't know. And that's at face value.
I'm gonna interrupt to remind you what my friend Gregory Mannarino says about where that money comes from. It doesn't just come from a war chest, because we don't have it in savings, and it really doesn't come from the Fed. The Fed is sucking it out of everyone's existing savings, earnings, and retirement.
Yeah, exactly. They put it on our backs. Yeah. It's so twisted, man. I think, look, when you and I, thankfully, we got people who listen to our work, who see what we see. When we started out, you and me, years and years ago, I didn't foresee where we would be in the future. I hoped that people would start to get it. But the proof is, and look at our followings, they've grown not because we're saying the wrong things, because people understand that what we're saying is correct. And they say, hold on a minute. You know what? This guy has a point. You know how many people, I'm sure you get the same thing, have written to me and said, Greg, when I listened to you years ago, I thought you were a kook. I thought you didn't know anything about what you were talking about. And they're like, I have come to realize that I was totally wrong, and I apologize. Now I see everything. People get that moment, that epiphany. They go, hold on a minute. Things are not what they seem to be. I've been telling people that for the longest time. Nothing is what it appears to be. And especially because people they're being programmed literally by the mainstream propaganda that's telling them, look here, don't look there, the deceptions, the distractions, the blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they say, people know when something is wrong. They get that gut feeling. They say, something just doesn't feel right. I don't know what you want to call it, intuition, some kind of a God-given gift. I think we all have it, to say, when someone lies to us, we know they're lying. You just know it, whether it's body language or the way the words are being said or put together. You just know it's not true. And people get it. When people hear the truth, eventually they come around and say, wow, this is all true. I gotta start paying more attention to it. Anyway, I'm happy that at least they haven't taken us down yet, bro. You and me, we're still out here. How many other guys got taken down? It's just every day I worry. I say, is today going to be the day? Is today going to be the day they're going to take us down? Because I think, again, we're moving towards a situation of more and more and more control, more freedoms being taken away, more liberties being taken away. And people, unfortunately, because they're being made to be slaves to the system, are willing to give up their freedoms and liberties. And that's the most scariest part of them all. It's unbelievable what we're seeing here. I don't think we've ever seen anything like what we're seeing now.
Along the way there, you mentioned the Dow to gold ratio as one of the things that you keep an eye on. We have a question specifically from a viewer on that. David Tierney, 4828, asks, what does the gold Dow ratio tell you, and how do you balance whether the Dow is overvalued, gold undervalued, or both?
Well, what I look at here is that, first of all, you got to, what do we know? Okay, look, we just got to listen to this warning. This is today. We got another warning here from Goldman Sachs about a drop with regard to the S&P 500. This stock market makes no sense. It's being propped up on the back of easy money, a dollar that is obviously losing purchasing power, and not just the dollar. I mean, we're talking about the dollar in this particular question here, but it's overall fiat currencies that are being wiped out deliberately, in my view. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it's laughable where it is right now. We have an economy, a global economy in free fall. We got debts and deficits exploding out of control. Inflation going to continue to rise here. So where's the Dow? I mean, I believe this, and I've studied this. I've looked at it every which way you can dream about and think about, honestly, over the years. I believe, first of all, no one knows where the bottom is with regard to the Dow. We are going to find out where it is. Again, they jumped in here at Dow 6,000 to start propping it up. That was the last meltdown here. We went from Dow 12,000, the market got cut in half, down to 6,000. Where's the bottom? Even though we're at wherever the hell we are with regard to the Dow right now, the bottom could be lower than 6,000. We don't know where it is, but let's just say the bottom is 6,000. I believe gold will be on par or more so than the Dow when this happens. Because it's so simple to understand. Again, right now, you got the situation where central banks, the Fed in this case, keeping rates artificially suppressed. What does that do? People don't understand how powerful that is. It's a tool it's a tool. Powell has all of his tools. You know what I'm talking about? So that tool, when you have a central bank that keeps rates artificially suppressed, what that does, talking about yield, okay, it opens up a doorway for cash to flow into risk assets or the stock market or equities. Now, when yields rise, you get the opposite effect. Okay, this is why you see whenever you hear Powell talk about, oh, yes, we're going to be raising rates aggressively, and the market takes a hit. Okay, that doorway will close. Eventually, it's going to lock. It's going to close and lock, and the Dow is going to plummet along with other markets around the world here. But again, it's all going to start and end in the debt market. So let's just say we got a stock market that's propped up on the back of easy money and a hyperinflated debt market. Debt market implodes, cash starts to bleed out of it, yields spike in an uncontrolled fashion. That puts pressure, again, it will close that doorway that has been open to force cash into, literally force it into risk assets. All of a sudden, you get a massive sell-off in the debt market, a massive sell-off in the stock market, or everyone goes running for the door at the same time. Now, cash doesn't grow money wings and fly away. No, it doesn't. It's going to move into suppressed assets. In my view, commodities, especially gold and silver, because I think they're the most undervalued of them all. So let's say we get Dow 6,000. At least we're going to get gold 6,000. I think it could be 2 times the Dow gold ratio, 2 times favoring gold. So we could see at Dow 6,000, we could see 12,000 gold. And imagine what that would be for silver at even 15 to 1. 10 to 1 is in a situation here. You have to understand how markets work. They always overreact, always. They overreact to the upside and overreact to the downside. When markets start to sell off and everyone's running to the door at the same time, people are willing to take anything for their assets, whatever they're holding. At one point, I'm willing to sell stock XYZ, but I'm willing to sell it only at this much. They got no buyers. Then you lower it, got no buyers. Now, all of a sudden, you put in a market order, you'll take whatever, and you just bang. It's self-fulfilling. It just pushes everything lower. So that's how I see that playing out. And cash is just going to move. And so at a minimum, and I guess it's just my opinion, and people, please do your own research on this. We are going to see a Dow gold ratio at one point of 1 to 1, or maybe even 2 to 1, favoring gold, depending on how much the panic is. And I think we could see a full-blown panic at that point. And commodities in aggregate, not just gold and silver, platinum, palladium, crude oil. This is why, you and I have been warning people for a very, very long time that prices are going to get a lot worse here. And this is going to happen very rapidly. Again, this could be within a few days. When markets crash, okay, and I'm not calling for a crash anytime soon, they do so very rapidly because everyone's running for the door at the same time. As I was saying, okay, someone watches their stock, Apple. I owned Apple stock and I want to sell it, but I'm only going to take this. Oh, no buyers. Okay, maybe I'll take this. You put in a limit order. When you're buying stocks, you could put in a limit or a market order or different kinds of orders, but those are the basic ones that you would use. And then, okay, I just want out. So I'll take anything. So you see everyone went to the door, bang, 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 bang. That's where you see that precipitous drop in stock prices when they do fall. I mean, it's like, an escalator up and then an elevator down. It's the same thing. It'll be the same kind of thing in the debt market too. When that sells off too, it's going to be an epic thing to see, and we're all going to witness it in this lifetime. Who knows what's going to trigger it? Some kind of black swan event? I don't know, but something obviously is going to kick this off. And it's going to be, in my view, a moment of their own choosing. This is not going to be an accident. Nothing ever happens by accident. This is going to be, okay, guys, we are ready to do this now. And it may play right into the digital currency. Look what they're doing. They're moving us in that direction here. We got the IMF. We got central banks. We have this, all talking about it. We would remember how they were trying to convince us that it wasn't going to happen a while back. Oh, there's not going to be a central bank digital currency. Now that's all you hear about, because of course that's where we're going, but they can't tell you that. That's crazy, man. It really is.
Now, you mentioned commodities a couple of times in this discussion, and you mentioned just now, you said, I'm not sure what's going to precipitate the actual, the pivot moment when everyone rushes for the exits of the current regime in the West. But in the Eastern part of the world, but not just the Eastern. We've got Mexico and others that are joining up with the BRICS Plus. There's a question here from Edward Ruiz, 4316. What happens when the dollar goes bye-bye when everyone moves to BRICS and buys commodities with the backing of physical metals? That
ain't going to happen without violence on a grand scale here. Again, the Federal Reserve is not going to give up that power. They already have a war, and we're obviously funding that war, and it seems to be expanding here. Obviously, I think there's going to be a collision. They're on a collision course between the BRICS nations and those that believe in the king dollar here, and the Federal Reserve will defend that. They will defend the dollar by any means. I mean, what the enforcement arm of the Federal Reserve is the United States military, its entire might, including its nuclear arsenal. So, this whole thing is about control. And in my view, it's about depopulation as well. And what better way can they do that than to bring us closer to, Gerald Celente, what does he tell us all the time? I love the guy. I'm sure you do too. When all else fails, they bring us to war. They already got all the little pawns in place here. And I can't imagine that the dollar will be dethroned without extreme violence. And a great loss of life, unfortunately. So people better be careful what they wish for. I know a lot of people are hoping that this BRICS thing is going to be some kind of a saving grace. I don't think I think people are looking for a savior in the financial system. I think their compass is a little bit off.
Well, now you've talked about this in the past as well, and we've had multiple other guests talk about this dialectic, the Hegelian dialectic that's set up with right hand and left hand, and the whole point of it is to get the public, the masses, distracted into this dichotomy, this conflict, apparent conflict, when actually the road up the middle, the synthesis, is what's actually the plan all along. We've seen that on the national scale here. Team red, team blue, which team you wish would win? Oh boy, if only they win, then they'll straighten everything out. And it's like, it doesn't matter who gets in, the debt increases, the power of the central bank increases, and the earnings, savings, and retirement, everybody else goes, and privacy and freedom go down the drain. But then you do it up to a global scale. Okay, now it's BRICS versus the West. BRICS versus the West. Who's going to win that big battle? If the whole thing is, no, there's a final solution that's been planned, and this is all just a way of playing it out, that gets back to what is that final solution, and how do ordinary people like ourselves best try to position ourselves to be harmed the least and be able to help each other the most?
Look, man, every freaking Friday, I let off with three things: love each other, care about each other, and be charitable. This whole financial game and everything else, and the polarizing entities that we have out here with the red versus blue and the BRICS versus the non-BRICS, and you're right. It's an amazing thing to think about. But look, we gotta understand that we're all just a big family, and that they're taking advantage of us in every way that they possibly can. I would say turn off your televisions. I don't listen to any of that stuff because it's designed as a mind control psyop. And to get people stuck on one side or the other here so they can't think straight. And some people, when they get so locked into that, they lose complete objectivity. They have no way to understand what's actually going on. So their mind kind of reverts into a defense. Okay, I have to choose a side, this side or that side, and then they defend that with all they have. And that's exactly what they want to happen. And you can see that going on here, obviously, and with regard to politics and everything else here. But the truth of the matter is, what people don't get, and I want, it's the central banks who are the one world government we have been warned about for years. They run the world. They run the financial system. They run the markets. They run the economy. I mean, I was just writing some stuff down today. So this was a headline. Biden crosses his fingers that the Fed will provide us with a soft landing. Meanwhile, every time we get a so-called good piece of economic news, he takes the credit. My economic policies are working. Are you kidding me? They're not his. It's the central banks. They run the economy. They run the financial system. They run the markets. But people don't get it. They don't understand what they're looking at. But again, they must pick a side. They will defend that side so they can be distracted. Look here. Don't look over there, understanding that it is the central banks collectively that are running the world. They run the world. They control the money, markets, and everything else. They run it. Everything else is just a sideshow.
So you're encouraging us to unplug from the distraction of the mass media that's meant to keep us in this mind fog, and wake up from that and realize we are all connected. We are all a people. Well, certainly the people within each nation have their beloved country. They'd like to have it still be theirs and be free. People want to be free. Your specific advice to people who want to maintain their freedom, you've talked about it mentally, unplug from the mass media because it's meant to control your mind. But other ways of maintaining your freedom.
Just get together with like-minded people, realize what's going on, understand who your enemy really is. The enemy is not each other. The enemy is the central banks. I mean, we've been warned about about central banks and central banking for hundreds of years, maybe longer, thousands of years. With regard to the banking system, going back to biblical times, we've been warned. We have been warned. But do we listen? No. We don't listen. It's an incredible thing to see. And everything that we've been warned about, going way, like I said, go back as far back as you want to go, it's all happening here. They control the money. They control the world. And everything else is just a sideshow. It's insane that people are taught to believe in a system that does not exist from the get-go. What they are taught from the get-go is to consume. You need this, you need that. Oh, you don't have the money for it? That's okay. You can take out a loan and you can borrow. And what does that do? That empowers these same entities here. It's an incredible thing. People don't live within their means, and that has created a world of slaves, a slave world. Slave, it's always the same story. The debtor becomes literally a slave to the person that's lending the money, lending the cash to them, and their lives are not theirs anymore. They're living in a reality that doesn't even exist. Most people have a massively negative net worth if they zero out what they own and what they owe, and that's a terrible, terrible place to be in. Honestly, I was there at one point in my life, many, many years ago. I finally dug myself out of that hole. And it took a long, long time and a lot of understanding. And it's something that happens to everybody. I mean, going back before I knew what I knew now, I was in $100,000 worth of debt, $100,000. Was even more money back then than it is now, equivalent today to probably about $250,000. But I managed to get myself out of it. And in fact, I have a whole paper about how to get out of unsecured debt. I did a whole video on it, telling people step by step, because I did it, telling them how to get out of it. Big institutions, they renegotiate their debt every day, every single day. But you can't do it because your credit is going to take a hit. Nonsense. Yes, your credit will take a hit. It's going to take a hit anyway. But there's ways to fix that too. I tell you, man, it's, I don't know. We got to look out for each other. That's what it comes down to.
in line with what you were just saying about how we're taught to become dependent, there's an advertisement. Everybody, if you haven't noticed, when we were kids, there weren't any of these drug ads on TV. Now they're everywhere. And the other thing is, you mentioned that people have not managed their finances well. That certainly can be true. It's made distressingly, toxically more prevalent in an environment where the things that would have been good for us, that were almost free or almost free, are either being taken away, or we're being told, no, you don't want that. You want this expensive thing. We're going to take away your life and we're going to sell it back to you at obscene prices. The drug industry has been one of those. In the last 3-year crisis that we just went through, some medications, some treatments, some therapies, some preventative healthful things, that vitamins and nutritionals, things that people could have taken, so as simple as taking a walk in the sunshine to get vitamin D. A lot of these things people were told, you can't have that. Doctors were told you can't prescribe that. Pharmacists were told you can't fill that, even if the doctor does prescribe it. And some of these things are very inexpensive and that sort of thing. But then they were told, now you got to have this very expensive solution. It's the only solution that's possible. That's not just the one crisis we went through, but others recently. I saw a drug ad. It irkles me every time I see it. It says, if you can't afford your medication, blah, 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 the company can help. So there's some real psyops in there. First of all, they put the responsibility on the individual if you can't afford it. And then they say your medication, as though, wait a minute, when did I agree to that was going to be my medication? Rather than there are probably healthy, natural ways of taking care of this, preventing this. But we're going to try to sell you something that's extremely unaffordable. And don't worry, your insurance will take care of it or whatever. So just that trap that we fall into of being sold the siren song of, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. World Economic Forum, most recently, you'll own nothing and be happy. So any final thoughts on that future that we're being sold a bill of goods about how we're going to be provided with these things that we won't be able to ever pay back? Our children and grandchildren won't be able to pay back. I'll
tell you something that bothers me as a retired healthcare provider. I believe I want to touch on this real quick with regard to every other commercial, you watch 4 commercials, 3 of them are drug related. This here is, I believe that it's not so much targeted as those people who are suffering from things like diabetes and high blood pressure, for which there are natural cures for. There's no doubt about it. Look it up for yourself. I know you realize that. But it's more targeted at our children. Children are bombarded with the same thing at a very young age. At the average age that a person is exposed to illicit or illegal drugs is 6. Look it up for yourself. 6 years old. So a child sitting there watching these drug commercials, and they set them up all pretty outside with smiling people, and they show people having barbecues, and everything is, your life is going to be absolutely, and moving in slow motion. Your life will be so happy you'll move in slow motion if you take their drug. Yeah. It's slow motion, and they repeat things 3 times. If you notice, it's hypnotic. They get you into this, and children watch this and they hear these words. You need this drug with this fancy name, and the kids. And then when they're presented, these children are presented on the street. Hey, this is a good drug. You remember that? And then they get the visions of the beautiful commercials and the people smiling and slow motion and the loveliness of it all. Then that opens up their mind. So, hey, you know what? Maybe I should take this drug because it's good for me. This is what I'm being sold by the media. And again, this plays off into, drug addiction. I've seen it firsthand in my own family. Obviously, as a healthcare provider, I worked in a level 1 trauma center for 10 years. I got to see the effects of these things, unfortunately. And it starts to play on the minds of the children. From maybe they're not exposed at 6, maybe it's 7, 8, or 9. Then all of a sudden they get offered these drugs, and they get, it's an incredible thing. It's a psyop at a very young age to try to get people addicted to a drug. Or you need this. They're trying to get children. They're putting children on drugs. They want you go to a pediatrician today, and they will offer your child a drug. And there's not enough healthcare providers or ex-healthcare providers like myself speaking out against this. Believe me, I really have thought about and I've spoken to other friends of mine who are still in medicine, they feel the same way. Drug commercials should not be allowed. What you take, what you put in your body for whatever disease process you may have, more than likely brought on by poisonous food and toxic environments, more than likely, okay? Maybe you need a lifestyle change or whatever it is. These things, people don't need to suffer from diabetes and high blood pressure and all these liver problems. They don't need it. Okay, it probably wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the food that is completely poisoned and whatever they're freaking spraying in the atmosphere and everything else on us. I mean, it's a crazy thing. But the decision to take a drug for whatever disease process someone has should be made between that person and their healthcare provider in a private setting. It shouldn't be broadcast for our children to see and start the brainwashing process. So then these children will become drug addicts in the future or believe that they need a drug to make their lives better here. It's an unbelievable thing, and people believe it too.
Yeah, even at a very subliminal, suggestive way, all of those ads are telling children, see, adults are not happy unless they're taking drugs. We're all sick unless we're taking drugs. We can't thrive and be flourishing unless we're taking drugs. So it's a worldview. It's a self view that gets inculcated.
It is, and people believe. I'm going to give you a clear example. My dad passed away 77 years old just a couple of years ago. 77, in my view, is way too young to die. Now, my dad, unfortunately, did suffer from all the ailments that people generally get: high blood pressure, diabetes, and everything else. And he really believed, oh, well, you know what? My doctor's just going to change my medicine or increase it, and I'm just going to be fine. I tell him, no, it's not going to work like that. The more your medicines are either increased or changed, the more side effects you're going to have. And he just didn't believe me. I mean, meanwhile, he knew I went to medical school and I learned all this stuff, and he didn't want to hear it. No, I was wrong, and he was right, because the drug commercials are telling him how happy and lovely life is going to be. Yeah, he ended up practically a vegetable, suffering for 2 freaking years before he even died. I mean, it was a terrible thing to watch. A lot of people have to, unfortunately, watch their loved ones suffer and eventually pass away. It's just the way it is these days. But people get locked into that. They think, oh, here's a clear example. Doesn't matter. My doctor's going to take care of me. He's going to increase my drugs, and I'm going to take more and more and more and more. Imagine believing that taking more drugs is going to be good for you. He clearly believed that. He ain't with us anymore at the ripe age, old age of 77. I think that, like I said, I think that's too young to die. Well,
bringing it back to then our core message of liberty and finance, we're being sold the same bill of goods as we are about we need drugs in increasing doses in order to thrive. We're being told we need debt in increasing doses in order to thrive. And we need protection by stripping away all of our constitutional liberties so we can have surveillance all the time so we can be safe, and so on. So, Candace Owens writes about this, about the new plantation. And I guess Klaus Schwab's comments about you'll own nothing and be happy kind of tells us where the plans are being laid out for us. So one last tee up for what people can do. 1, 2, 3 things that people need to do to make sure that we don't march into that trap that's been set for us.
Realize that 99% of the things you're hearing are a lie. And I think people who follow our work are very keenly aware of it. I'm telling you, I think the number one thing people need to do is shut off their televisions. Just shut them off. Don't listen to the propaganda. Shut off the news. It's all a distraction. It's all a deception. And the lies are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The bigger the lie is, the easier it is for people to believe it. That is also another unfortunate part of human nature. And they know that. There's no accountability with regard to anything anymore, and especially the media. They can say whatever they want to, and just lie, and they're not held to account. It's unbelievable. Years ago there was accountability. Not anymore. It's gone. It's absolutely gone. So
well, they were supposed to be the watchdog. Who's watching the watchdog?
Exactly. Watch Liberty and Finance, and I think people are going to be freaking okay.
Well, Greg, we always appreciate your visits here. If people want to follow your work, and I think they should on a daily basis, where should they get plugged in?
Go right to my website, Google me. I'm easy to find. I'm pretty much everywhere.
We've been speaking with Gregory Mannarino, the founder of TradersChoice.net, here on Liberty and Finance. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.